locations in the comments, everybody, as y'all are coming in. Let's make sure we are active where we need to be active. Good here. As y'all are coming in, put your locations in the comments. We started a little bit later than usual today, about an hour later than my normal time. But we are still going to get to the show as we need to get to it. As y'all are coming in, again, put your locations in the comments as y'all are coming in. Put your locations in the comments as y'all coming in. We are live on Rumble. Good morning, Rumble. We are live on YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. Live on X. Good morning, X. Live on LinkedIn. Good morning, LinkedIn. My name on those 4 platforms. Each of those platforms is at Dre All Day. LinkedIn, Rumble, X, and YouTube is at Dre All Day. We are live on Facebook/Work on Your Game University. Had an issue with Facebook yesterday, but it's good today. So Facebook/Work on Your Game University for those of you who use Facebook. Live on Instagram at Dre Baldwin, and we are live on TikTok at Work on Your Game. So the topic here today is Donald Trump dismantling the Department of Education, allegedly. I mean, it was through an executive order that he put out. So it looks like he's trying to do some things to take apart the Department of Education. He did talk about this during his campaign at the beginning of his current second administration. So that's what we're going to discuss here today. Put your locations in the comments. I'll shout out a few people and then we will get started. I know I'm not starting at my usual time, so some people might have thrown in the towel today, thought maybe I wasn't going to go live, but I had to take care of some stuff is taken care of now. We can get to it. So give me your locations. Happiness Now, checking in from the ATL. Good morning. Marsha from Chesapeake, VA. Good morning. Let's see. Thank you for the gifts early. Marsha, Wifey Tips, Katie, Leah, good morning. Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit is in the house. Good morning to you, Katie. Good morning. Hugs and loves all around Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Shout out to Middle America. Murphy the Mutt checking in from Bristol, Tennessee. Good morning. Deacon Dad, I thought you bailed on us. No, did not. We're here. Kuya bin Yashara, Manson, North Carolina. Katie said, TAC team, activate 100K. Yes, get to 100K. We're not even at 1K right now. We just got to 1,000. So we'll see if we get to 100K. We will see. The OG McCoy checking in from the Shy. Shout out to Chicago. OG McCoy, good morning. Wifey Tips and Lynn, thank you for the gifts. Early Birdie checking in from Texas. Randy Scott Monroe from upstate South Carolina. Federal Court from Kingston, Jamaica. Brooke Martella, Monaco. Good morning. Thought I was late. Well, technically you are, and I am. Everybody's late all at the same time, I guess. Here today, I guess we'll call it that. I did start later than usual here today. Normal start time is 8 a.m., folks. We didn't start. So yesterday and today, we did not start the normal start time. John checking in from Jacksonville, Florida. Good morning. Rick Thomas, good morning. So we are talking about the alleged dismantling of the Department of Education by Donald Trump. Actually, it's kind of fair to say he wants to dismantle it. He has come out and actually said this. Now, Donald Trump says a whole lot of things he doesn't actually mean. He speaks directionally a lot of times on certain subjects. So does he actually mean he wants to dismantle the Department of Education? I wouldn't go that far, but that's why we're here to discuss it. So Donald Trump's executive order about dismantling the Department of Education came out in March, for those who don't know. So this was like, this is November, so what's that, 8 months ago? He put out an executive order where he was looking to start the process of dismantling what is essentially the Department of Education. It was one of the biggest ideological swings of his second term, but that was very early in the term. It was only in March. It was only 2 months into his term. And it was a direct attempt to erase what has been a federal agency since 1979. The Department of Education is not that old. That's not even 50 years. So it ain't that old, the Department of Education. But he is looking to get rid of it. And he hasn't been a fan of it the entire time that he's been talking about it. Now, for those who don't understand, the Department of Education does not mean that if it goes away, there will be no education or no schools or no public schools or free lunch or whatever you think you get out of a public school. The Department of Education is just a federal agency that oversees educational systems in the states in the USA. Each state has their own set of rules and laws and processes then the federal rules, laws, and processes override the state laws, rules, and processes. So if the Department of Education were to be dismantled, or let's just say it didn't exist at all, or it never had existed, there would still be schools. It's just that each state would have their own process, and Missouri would be different from Montana, different from Washington State, different from New York, different from Florida, different from Arkansas, different from Texas. So each state already has their own rules and processes for how they do things. The Department of Education just has some federal guidelines that each state has to follow. And then outside those federal guidelines, the state has their own state level guidelines. If there was no DOE, Department of Education, the federal level, then everything would be ruled by the state, which means if you don't like the education in the state of Texas, you can move to Oklahoma. You don't like Oklahoma, move to Arkansas. You don't like Arkansas, move to Alabama. You don't like Alabama, move to Delaware. So each state would have, they could have their own completely different set of how they do things. The DOE just makes some federal regulations that everybody has to follow, which could be good, could be bad, depending on how you view the Department of Education. Now, what he wants to do is eliminate the DOE and shift all the responsibility back to the states, basically making the government smaller and giving the federal government less overreach when it comes to the specific topic of education. Now, 8 months later, here we are in November, the administration has taken a concrete step. So now the next thing is they've transferred adult education to the Labor Department. So adult education used to be run by the Department of Education. Now it's going to be run by the Labor Department. They took international programs and they sent those to the State Department, not each state, but the literal State Department. Those are the people who give out like White House clearance and things like that. That's the State Department. Native American programs that used to be run by the DOE, they're now moved to the Interior Department, which is another department within the government. And they've done many other things. Those are just some examples. But this project is now stuck between political momentum and legal reality because, of course, since it's Donald Trump and since he has a lot of enemies, and there are a lot of people who are big fans of the Department of Education, specifically teachers unions and people who have worked for, with, and within the Department of Education. They're going to try to fight him legally on this. This is what they do. So he has some legal reality he has to face. Some conservatives are celebrating this historic rollback of federal overreach. That's the way they're framing this, is that we don't want federal overreach for anything up to and including the Department of Education. So we want to get them out of here and let's just let the states take care of things. While on the other side of the conversation, you have educators, disability advocates who believe that the Department of Education is their savior and they will make sure folks with disabilities are taken care of because of federal guidelines. Not necessarily because of the Department of Education, but because of the federal guidelines that come with it. And at the state level, maybe it won't the protections won't be as strong, maybe. And Democrats, of course, that's half the voting base. They all warn of catastrophic consequences if you get rid of certain things, like things that the DOE has granted, such as Title I schools, special education, Pell Grants, and civil rights enforcement. They are arguing that if you get rid of the Department of Education, all of those things are going to go away. That's nonsense, but that's the frame that they're using, and a lot of people buy into it, so it has to be spoken of. So lawsuits are already coming out. Staff inside the agency say the plan is chaotic and directionless. Of course, that's what they're going to say, whether it's true or not. And the shutdown has further complicated operations. Well, it did, but now the shutdown is pretty much over. Now, Donald Trump and the education secretary, this woman named Linda McMahon, they call this restructuring proof that the department can be unwound, meaning everything that the department was doing, all those same things will still happen. It's just not going to happen under the Department of Education, meaning the Department of Education was redundant and not necessary because, look, all the stuff it was doing is still taking place, even though the Department of Education no longer exists. But opponents, on the other hand, say this is an attack on vulnerable students disguised as decentralization. I understand this frame. They're going to call it that because you have to emotionalize it in order to get some people behind an idea. If you make it just straight up logical, then you're only going to get the logical thinking people about it. But if you make it emotional, damn it, then you get a whole bunch of people excited about it. And now everybody wants to talk about it. Like, I can't believe they did that, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the argument here. This is a framing argument. And anytime you have political arguments or legal battles, it's always going to be an argument of frame rather than an argument of fact. It's not a matter of who is factually right or objectively or logically correct. It's about who controls the frame. And whoever controls the frame, they get their facts and their logic to matter more than the facts and logic of the other side. Because both sides have facts and logic. It's just a matter of who has a better frame. That's what this is going to come down to. Now, this fight reveals that there's a deep divide between those who want maximum state autonomy. That's generally the people on the political right, and those who rely on federal guarantees to protect certain things, such as students, funding for schools, and enforced equity. That tends to be the people on the left. So this is what this is an argument on. The right versus the left on a different ideological point, and they're both arguing their own facts. There are some feelings mixed into this on both sides, more on the left than it is the right, I would have to say. But that doesn't mean that that makes either side right or wrong, because mixing feelings into an argument is often a very effective tool, very effective strategy for getting people to go along with your point. So let's see where this ends up going. So let me introduce myself first for those who don't know me. My name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of a few books, done a few TEDx talks. I run this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. Our focus over here these days is helping you with what we call the power presence, which is a biological rewiring of your personal identity. We don't do behavior modification. That's part of it, but that's not the game. The game is about maximizing who you are as a person, who you are being. When you change who you're being, then what you do automatically follows. That means the way you talk, the actions that you take, your body language, all of that stuff automatically follows when you change your identity. We help people with identity shifts so that you can do better in your personal life and in your professional life through what we call the power presence. We have a coaching program based around this. We do challenges based around it. We have a manifesto. We have a whole program around this called the power presence. You can learn more about that by going to the link in my bio or clicking the link you see in my pinned comment or in the description of this video, depending on which app you're watching me on right now. I am live on 7 different applications right now, between TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble X, YouTube, and there's one more that I didn't mention. I think that's it. Rumble, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So the replays of this are always on YouTube, by the way. So getting into this topic here today, this executive order that Trump put out, it fulfills Trump's longstanding promise to shrink or eliminate the Department of Education. All right, that's what it is. He has been saying this for a while, that he wants to shrink or completely get rid of the Department of Education, because Donald Trump seems to be in favor of limited government, smaller government. He doesn't want the big government bureaucracies running things. He'd rather make it small and rather put all the responsibility on the states for running things how they want to run them, which is the reason why we have the United States. The states are united, where there are some federal laws and rules that we all follow, but at the same time, each state is autonomous enough that they can make their own rules. The Department of Education supersedes the rules that each state makes and says that, hey, you have to follow these rules. Everybody has to follow them. Donald Trump doesn't like that idea. So now he wants to put the power back in the hands of each individual state. Personally, I'd rather it be that way. I'd rather each state have their own rules, because if I live in the United States, I live in New York, and I don't like the educational system, and I care enough about it that I'm willing to relocate to get the better system, then I can look around at the systems of all 50 states, find a state that has a system that I like the best, along with other considerations, and I can move to that state. However, if I live in New York and there are certain rules happening in the state of New York that I don't like, then I look around at all the other states and I realize that these rules are federal rules that they're following, meaning the federal government sets these rules for all schools. There's nowhere for me to move, because no matter where I go, those same rules are going to apply because they're federal level. But if they're just state level, then I at least have the option of 49 other states to go to if my main consideration is education. But if the federal laws apply across everywhere, which is what a federal law is, then I have no other option. So I only have one option, even though there are 50 states. So I'd rather there be a bunch of options education-wise, because I don't want the federal government deciding how things go for my children going to school. I want me as a parent to decide how things go for my children if they're going to be going to public schools. And that can be based on the way that we vote on a state level and a local level, not just on a federal level, and not just based on some rules that the federal government came up with, who knows, many years before even I was in school, let alone when my kids were in school. So I personally like the concept of breaking this down to a state level thing and getting rid of the Department of Education. Now, conservatives have been pushing this concept since the Reagan years, at least I found out. And Trump said this has been 45 years in the making. So 45 years in the making takes us back to about 1980, which is right after the Department of Education came to exist. So if conservatives have been pushing this since Reagan, it means they didn't like the Department of Education as soon as it came out. That's basically what we're saying. It came out in 1979. Now, an executive order alone cannot legally abolish a federal department. That's why this is going to be a bigger issue, and this is going to take longer to work out than it seems. tell me the exact details of the executive order Trump put out when it came to the Department of Education recently so I can share the specifics. So I want to know exactly what this executive order is, because this what is that has been being talked about. But I want to know executive order that he put out is called the Executive Order on Returning Power over Education to States and Local Communities. Now, this is what he put out in March. And he signed this in the White House, again, during an education event back in the days. Now, there's a lot of details to this. So it wants to facilitate department closure and function transfers. So identify and reassign. This is what McMahon has to do. Reassign ED programs, grants, offices, other federal agencies, which they just did. This eliminates all the federal red tape and returns education authority to parents, states, and local school boards, which is how I prefer it be. It ensures no disruption to core services, prohibits certain ideologies and funded programs. So, and the government gets to decide what those ideologies, prohibited ideologies are. You can guess what those might be. They want to empower states and families, which I agree with. That's the headline. And they want to get this done over a certain amount of time. The government shutdown slowed this whole process down, but this is what they're trying to do now. So on November 18th, a week ago, these are the transfers that got announced. So I just told you about this. Student aid and student loans just went to the Treasury Department to streamline financial administration. Special education programs such as IDEA and K-12 grants, they are now under the Health and Human Services Department. That's HHS. That's Robert F. Kennedy. Then the child care grants for college students went to HSS as well. Foreign and medical school accreditation, also HHS. Fulbright programs and international education grants over to the State Department, and Indian Education Office is now in the Interior Department. So they're slowly moving things around. Now, critics have gone up against this, of course, I already told you. They say it's going to have catastrophic impact on low-income students, disabled students, and minority students. So the political leftists position themselves as the ones who are arguing for the little guy, whereas they have framed the conservatives as being the ones who are only arguing for the big guy. I reject this frame, but I understand that this is the position that they decided to take. So this has been called overreach. So far, it's been upheld, but there will be more. There'll be more on all of this. This is not the end of this. Now, the EO alone, as I said, cannot abolish a federal department. It was created in 1979 by Congress, so this would have to go through a vote, and there is no way that the Democrats in Congress are going to vote for this. No way this is going to happen. So Donald Trump is going to have to somehow, some way figure out how to get this done. He knows he can't get it done through Congress. That's the reason why he did it through executive order, at least this part of it. To abolish the Department of Education, they would have to go through Congress. And even though the Republicans have a majority in both sides of Congress, in order to get something to pass, you either have to have a supermajority, which they don't have, where it doesn't even matter if the Democrats agree, or you got to get some Democrats to agree. No Democrat is going to agree with this. So there's no way they can get this passed in Congress. And again, this is the issue. Only way they could do it is they would need to get more Republicans to replace Democrats, in Congress. And right now, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that in the 2026 midterms. But we are pretty close to still almost about a year away from those. So anything could change. A lot can change between now and then. But for the department to get completely eliminated, they need Congress. And right now, Trump does not have the votes. And by his actions, we know that he knows he doesn't have the votes. Now, Linda McMahon, she's the one who's been put in charge here. She's already overseen major transfers, as I already explained to you. Now, the biggest departments, Civil Rights Department, Student Loan Department, Special Education Department, those remain untouched for now, as of today. Now, these units are legally complicated and politically explosive to move. So you try to move any one of these three things, the Civil Rights Department, that's going to be a huge battle, and no way Democrats are going to vote for any of it. Student Loan Department, that's the money part, and no way Democrats are going to go for any of that. And special education, this is helping people who can't help themselves, maybe necessarily. No way Democrats go for any of that. So Donald Trump knows he can't really do as much as he wants to do here because he doesn't have the votes. And that's why they haven't touched any of these things, because these are, again, legally complicated. There'd be a ton of lawsuits before anything actually happened. And politically, this would be great stories. If they happen, it'd be great content for somebody like me. But is this actually going to occur? I say probably not. Not until after the 2026 midterms, if even then, because the Republicans will have to win big. And right now, if it happened today, they're not going to win big. but things can change. So don't get comfortable. Now, Republicans praise this plan, Trump's plan, as restoring parental and state control. That's the way that they're framing it, and generally they're correct. Because as I already explained, I'd rather there be a state level issue that I had to deal with as a parent than a federal level issue I had to deal with. Because at the state level or local level, I could maybe get something done with a few phone calls. At the federal level, I probably can't get a damn thing done no matter how many times I call. So I'd rather be closer and smaller as possible because that gives me a better chance of being able to influence the situation as a parent and make a decision for myself as a parent. And this is how Republicans are framing this, and they are correct. They're not lying. This is a frame, but it's also true. And the Democrats are saying, they're not saying it is not true. What they're saying is we want to keep these certain federal statutes in place because it protects everybody as a whole and doesn't leave any loopholes for any states or any jurisdiction to slip through if they don't want to follow a certain law. It's at the federal level, they got to follow pretty much everything. So governors like Huckabee, Sanders, and Stitt, they say federal policies were one size fits all. Well, they're right. I mean, that's what a federal policy is. When you set a policy at the federal level that applies to every state, it's a one size fits all rule, similar to the Roe v. Wade. It was a one size fits all rule that said this applies to everybody. But when you remove that, now each state gets to make its own rules. Good news for all of you Americans is that when you're an American citizen, you are free to travel about the country. You can go wherever you want. Go whatever state you want to. You don't need papers to drive from Colorado to Wyoming to Nebraska to South Carolina. You can go wherever you want within the United States freely as you wish, and you can move to whichever state that you want to. And if you like the rules in one state but don't like the rules in another state, or the laws in one versus another, then go to the one where you like things. And you are not subject to a one size fits all federal rule the way that they have things set up at the federal level. That's the reason why I like the concept of dismantling federal overreach and making it state level. Again, it doesn't mean that the rules don't exist anymore. It just means that the rules are state level instead of federal level. I generally like that. And when it comes to education, I absolutely like it. Now, educators warn that this destabilizes funding for millions of disadvantaged students. This is how educators are framing this, that it destabilizes funding. This is a false frame. And I'm going to explain to you why this is a false frame.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy. Okay.
Reason this is a false frame is because they're using a word that is they're using a very tricky word here that can be interpreted in several different ways. The word they're using is destabilize. Destabilize doesn't mean that the funding goes away. That's not what they said. Destabilizing doesn't mean that certain people don't get funding. They didn't say that either. They say it destabilizes as it's a mental hook that they're putting in your head, an emotional hook they're putting in you to make you feel like, okay, if they destabilize funding, that means there's a chance you might not get it. That's what they're intimating without actually saying it. And Title I and IDEA, IDEA, that's all capital letters, these support 10 million low income and disabled children. Now, understand that Trump's executive order does not get rid of Title I, nor does it get rid of IDEA, because they can't do that. And what the educators or opponents of Trump are saying is that, hey, 10 million low income and disabled children are supported by these programs, and Donald Trump making this move destabilizes the funding for them, as if to intimate these kids won't have funding or they won't have programs or they won't have anywhere to go to school if Trump does this. Again, they're not saying this in so many words. They're intimating it to try to emotionally hook people into going against the executive orders or go against the program because of these emotional hooks that they're putting in people. And these work. This works very well on a whole lot of people. A lot of people are easily swayed by emotional arguments that make no logical sense or have no logical basis, like this one right here.
Emotional, damn it.
There's no logical basis to what they're saying. Again, that's why they didn't make a logical argument. They just said you're destabilizing funding. What does that even mean? You're destabilizing funding. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a word that they're using to get you to emotionally believe that there's going to be a problem. The administration claims that there will be no service interruptions during the transition. And if had there been one, we would know about it. There haven't been any. That's the proof. The proof is what has actually happened. Not what someone says is going to happen. Not what someone warns the doomsday, the chicken little, the sky is falling down. What has actually occurred? Answer is nothing has occurred. There have been no service interruptions. If there is, we'll know about it. Now, McMahon promised uninterrupted Pell Grants, uninterrupted student loans, and uninterrupted grant cycles. In other words, if your kid's about to go to college in the fall, in the fall of 2026 and they're about to get a Pell Grant or they need a student loan or whatever else they're doing, they will be fine. If they were supposed to get a grant from the state, they're still going to get it. They had a federal grant, they're still going to get it. They got a federal loan, they're still going to get it. Nothing's changed. All they're doing is moving stuff around, but the money is still going to be the money. The supplies are still going to be the supplies. So when people throw these things out there, again, they're using emotional arguments to try to sway you and get you to see things a certain way without offering any logical basis upon which to build their argument.
Emotional, damn it.
Now, conservatives see the move as dismantling. Actually, let me back up. Staff inside the department, people who work in the Department of Education, this is what they're saying. They're saying that this is chaotic, confusing, and rushed. Maybe it is for them, because these are all subjective terms. Chaotic is a subjective term. Confusing is a subjective term. And rushed is a subjective term. So people are looking at the exact same thing and calling it two different things. You could say that this is very smooth, very clear, and is happening at a steady, controlled pace. Another person can look at the exact same thing and say this is chaotic, confusing, and rushed. What's the difference? Nothing. Only difference is the perception that people either have themselves or they're trying to frame it as being a certain way, whether they believe it or not. So whistleblowers are saying that the plan doesn't make any sense and that morale is collapsing. This is a funny frame for people to put around this. And
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
the reason why this is a funny frame is because they say that whistleblowers, these are people who are whistleblowers, a person, for those who don't know, is a person inside of an organization or inside of any entity who sees something bad happening and they call it out and they basically get some form of legal protection for being the one who calls out the bad thing happening. You're like the snitch, basically. And whistleblowers, they're calling themselves whistleblowers, but there's no whistle to blow because nothing bad has occurred. They're just framing it this way. They told reporters, again, they didn't tell investigators, they didn't tell the judge, they didn't tell a grand jury, they told a reporter, which means nothing bad happened. Something bad happened, you're talking to authorities in the legal system. You're not talking to reporters who are just writing stories on blogs. So they told reporters, this is what they said. They said that the plan makes no sense. Okay, wow, what a big news break. All right, people who work in the Department of Education says the plan to dismantle their job makes no sense. I would say the same damn thing if I worked there too. Yes, it makes no sense for them to take away my job and take away my salary and kick me to the curb and now I gotta go get a different job. Yes, that makes no sense. I agree with you, whistleblowers. It makes no sense to you for you to get fired from your own job because your job is about to not exist anymore. I agree that it makes no sense. And they also say that morale is collapsing. Of course, morale is collapsing. Your job is collapsing. All right, my morale would be collapsing too if I was on a Titanic and I noticed the boat sinking. Yes, morale is collapsing on this boat. What the hell are you talking about? This is all emotional arguments. This is one of the main criticisms I have of the political left or people who will go against Donald Trump is that they take anything the guy says or does and they just try to make an emotional frame around it to try to get you to go against it because you bought into the emotion. This doesn't make any sense.
Emotional, damn it.
So they're saying the plan makes no sense. It makes a whole lot of sense. That's how they got the plan pushed through. And the reason it makes sense is because the people who won the election decided to come up with this plan. That's the reason it makes sense. Not because you necessarily personally approve of the plan, because you ain't one of the people in the decision-making room when the plan gets made, obviously, because if you were, you wouldn't be a whistleblower, number one. Number two, you wouldn't be talking to reporters. You'd be talking to the people making the decisions. A reporter is not a decision maker. A reporter is the one who reports the decision that got made. So if you're talking to reporters, that means you're not a decision maker, nor do you have the ear of the decision makers, and the decisions are made by decision makers. The reporters talk about what the decision makers did. There's different levels to this shit. So them saying that it makes no sense, the whistleblowers who are looking like their job's about to get lost, they say morale is collapsing. It's supposed to. Morale is supposed to collapse when your job is getting destroyed and your industry or your entity that you work in is no longer going to exist. I would expect that morale got destroyed. I don't see this as necessarily a bad thing. But if people just look at this on the surface and don't think about it, then they're easily swayed by the nonsense. Now, conservatives see this move as dismantling what they call the quote unquote woke indoctrination, close quote. Now, a lot of people get triggered by this word woke. Woke means being hypersensitive to injustices in society, particularly around race if we were to say the number one thing. That's what woke means. So anybody asking what does woke mean, that's what it means. It means being very attuned to injustices in society, again, specifically around race or particularly around race, but it could be around other things. That's what woke is. the context of this, because conservatives are saying that they want to get rid of all this woke stuff. And I understand why conservatives don't like woke stuff, because conservatives, the majority of conservatives tend to be of the majority, the racial majority. So when woke stuff comes around, it's putting all this emphasis on, well, we have to make reparation in some way for the racial minorities, which is everybody other than white people, because white people are the majority. So conservatives, being that a lot of conservatives are white folks and a lot of white folks are conservatives, they see the woke stuff as, okay, now you're demonizing me as a white person just for being white, and I'm supposed to bow to you, lose to you, get a lesser position to you, less opportunity to you, just because you're something that's not white and I am white and I never did anything wrong to you from the beginning. I completely understand why a conservative, especially a white conservative, has an issue with anything that is related to wokeness. If you happen to be a racial minority, but you are also conservative, there are plenty of those as well, not the majority in those groups, but plenty of them. Those people are looking at it and saying, well, look, I'm a racial minority. I was able to make it happen for myself, despite the fact that I'm supposed to feel disadvantaged because I'm black or white. I'm not black, but not white, excuse me, black or brown or whatever I am. I was able to make it happen anyway. And I don't like the idea of telling me or telling anybody who looks like me that I'm supposed to be at a disadvantage simply because I'm part of the racial minority. Therefore, I don't like the woke stuff either, because it also makes me look like maybe I'm not as good as I actually am, because people get the idea that I only got the position that I got because they had to give it to somebody who was black or brown as opposed to opening it up to everyone else. So I understand why people who are racial minorities, but also conservative, they have a problem with wokeness as well. And on the flip side, I understand why people are okay with wokeness and the concept of wokeness, or big supporters of it, because if you're black or brown and you've been indoctrinated your entire life that being black or brown puts you at a disadvantage in America relative to the white people in America, and you believe that, you truly believe it in your bones, then you're going to go with anything that coincides with that idea. So I understand that argument as well. And I understand that there are white people out there who are not conservatives. They are more on the liberal side. And they say, hey, as a white person, we've had advantages that other people haven't had. We got to level the playing field. We got to make sure that everyone gets at the same place and everyone's starting from the same place, and not everyone getting a head start over others just due to race. So we got to balance things out. These are the people who I call the white saviors. I'm not a big fan of the white saviors, but I understand that they do exist. And I understand their argument as well. So there are arguments on all sides of this whole thing when it comes to woke. My position on woke is, again, let me remind you of my background. My background is as an athlete. I played professional sports for almost a decade. And in the sports world, it doesn't matter who your dad was or who your mom is or where you're from or how tall or short. You got to get on the field or the court or the track or in the pool. You have to prove it. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you can play, you can play. And if you can't play, you can't play. It does not matter where you came from. That's the bottom line, because in sports, things are decided instead of being decided by a human, which is how it happens mostly in the business world. In the sports world, things get decided by a scoreboard. The scoreboard is completely objective, impartial, and completely detached emotionally when it comes to feelings about you or your opponent. So if you can play, the scoreboard will make it clear that you can play. And if you can't play, the scoreboard makes it clear that you can't play. I like things being judged objectively, not subjectively. I like objective measurements, such as sales numbers are objective measurements. Now, an award like the Emmy Awards or the Grammy Awards or the Oscar Awards, those are subjective. They're based on committees of people voting for people that they like. I'm not a fan of those. That's why I'm not in the entertainment industry. I come from the sports world where it's completely objective, where nobody has to like you, but if you can play, they still got to give you the trophy. So I'm not a fan of wokeness, because even as a black man who is from America, my parents from America, grandparents from America, I don't like the concept of being told or taught, me or anyone else of my skin tone, that you're at a disadvantage because of your skin tone and that you are expected to come up shorter, or that you need some type of boost from society just because of the color that you are, and that you should be hyper aware of any injustices happening to you because the only reason it's happening to you because it's the color of your skin. This is nonsense. This is teaching people to be weak. I don't like the concept of teaching black people or brown people or anybody other than a white person that you are somehow at a disadvantage just by the nature of you being a certain skin tone, and that anything that you get, it should be graded on a curve just because you're black or brown. No. Remember, I come from the sports world. All right, if I get on the court as a basketball player with 10 white guys, if I'm better than all 10 of them, then they still got to give me the trophy. It doesn't matter if those white guys come from some rich suburb. It doesn't matter. All right, if I'm the best player, I get the award. And if I'm the worst player, then I get kicked out of the gym. That's the way it works, period. It's a performance-based business and a results-based business. It is not a skin tone and feeling and emotion-based business. That's the world that I come from. That is my world view. And that's the reason why I'm not a fan of wokeness. Doesn't necessarily make me a conservative, but that is my view on wokeness, period. So on this point, I would agree with the conservatives of getting rid of any type of woke indoctrination, especially with it being taught to kids, because this gets taught to kids in school. And we're talking about Department of Education. So let's just say the K through 12 level, most importantly, that K through 8 level, when kids are at their most open mentally developmental stages, most malleable mentally developmental stages, they're being taught that, hey, you're black, which means America is against you, racism is hurting you, and your chances of making it are lesser simply because you're black, and you go out into the world with this idea that the world is against me, or I'm not supposed to be as successful just because I'm black, and a white person already has a head start on me. You already putting poison in the kid's mind before they even get out into the world. And this wasn't being taught when I was in K through 8, but it is being taught now. So I'm not a fan of this. So if getting rid of the Department of Education puts a dent in this type of teaching, then I'm completely okay with it. This is what conservatives are framing it as. Now, people on the other side are saying that's not what's happening, but there's a whole argument around this. Now, Trump tied the Department of Education to the DEI programs. I say that's a fair connection. That DEI came from some idea that got cooked up in the Department of Education. I don't think they 100% created it, but they have a lot to do with it. So I don't mind that association. He said the gender curriculum is based in the Department of Education. I agree with that as well. And federal guidance battles with the states, yes, that's the Department of Education. Because if there was no federal guidance, i.e. no Department of Education, there'd be no battle. So Donald Trump is right about these three things. The DEI, the gender curriculum, and any federal guidance battles have to come from the Department of Education. So I am in support of these points that Donald Trump alluded to. Now, legal experts say that lawsuits could halt or slow down every part of this plan. That I agree with the legal experts on. They very well could slow down. Not they could, they will slow down every part of this plan. Everything Donald Trump and his team are trying to do to dismantle the Department of Education. Those of you who don't like it or don't like Donald Trump or you love the Department of Education, one of the three, understand that lawsuits are going to slow all of this shit down real quick, and it's going to slow it down a lot, at least for now. There's going to be a lot of legal battles back and forth to court, and lawyers, there are a bunch of lawyers who are going to make a whole lot of money because they bill by the hour fighting this back and forth in court. So any of you want to make some money and you want to guarantee that you always have work, become a lawyer in the United States of America and go work for anything surrounding or around Donald Trump. I don't know how much time you got left, but go do anything around Donald Trump. There'll be plenty of lawsuits and plenty of money to be made for you because you'll always be in court, whether you win or lose. Now, that's absolutely happening. So states like California, they argue that this executive order violates the Constitution and federal funding statutes. Now, this is just their argument. Is it true? We don't know. Will it be upheld in court? We don't know. But here's the thing. Is going to go to court. And you know who always makes money when you got to go to court? The lawyers. So any of you parents out there want to send your kid to a career where they're guaranteed to make some money, tell them become a lawyer. All right. There will always be work because these kind of battles politically are happening all the time. We only know about it or we're talking about it now because it's Donald Trump, and Donald Trump draws a ton of attention. But this kind of things is happening all the time. Again, it's only becoming news because of Donald Trump. But this was happening during the Obama term, Biden term, the first Trump term. Is just, again, it's news because Donald Trump's involved. And it makes its way down to the everyday citizen who doesn't pay a ton of attention to politics, people like me and maybe people like you. Now, this move energizes the America First base heading into 2026. So some say this is one of the reasons why he's doing it. He wants to get the momentum going back for MAGA/America First. Because MAGA influencers celebrate returning power to local communities. And this has been one of the things Trump's been about from the beginning. I generally would agree with this point, that MAGA and the political right have generally been about making the government smaller, maybe not the smallest, that would probably be the libertarians, but on the conservative side, smaller than the Democrats want to. The Democratic Party tends to be the party of, we want to help everybody, including the little guy, including the minority, including the people who have less. All you all have to do to let us help you, is grant us as much power as possible as a government, and we will solve all your problems. That is the frame that the Democrats have been using for the last 60 years. Is that fair? Give me a yes or a no. What y'all think about that? Is that a fair frame the Democrats have been using for the last 60 years? We want to help everybody, including the little guy, including everybody other than a white person. So just grant us as much power as possible and we'll solve all your problems. I mean, this is what Lyndon Baines Johnson put out there in the Great Society plans he came out with 60 years ago. This is where we got civil rights. This is where we got welfare. This is where we got the Department of Education. This is where you got Kamala Harris in 2024 telling you all the things she was going to give you. She was going to give you $25,000 to buy a house and $20,000 to start a business and all these things that she was saying. People understand that you can't get something for nothing, right? You understand the third law of economics. There is no such thing as a free lunch. Or is that the second law? It's the second. No, we'll give the third law. Second law is diminishing marginal returns. First law is supply and demand. Third law is there is no such thing as a free lunch. The United States government does not give out free lunch. And if they do, I suggest you not eat that lunch. I suggest you go somewhere else. Don't eat the lunch that you get for free from the United States government. There is no such thing as a free lunch. What that means, folks, is that everything has a cost. That's the actual point. Everything has a cost. So Kamala Harris, all the way back to Lyndon Baines Johnson, 60 years earlier, saying we're going to give you all of these things. The government, first of all, does not have the resources to just give stuff to millions of people. Secondly, anytime anyone gives you something and they don't ask you for anything in return, that does not mean that you're not getting, that they're not going to get something in return. They're going to get something. They're either going to get it now or they're going to get it later. Either you know about it or you don't know about it, but nobody gives out lunch for free. Only people who give out lunch for free might be your parents, maybe your parents, until you turn 18. Then after that, everything has a cost, all right, for all of you. So there's the government just giving stuff away. It is what the Democratic Party has positioned themselves as for a pretty long time. This is why they're all in the, we got to get the billionaires to pay their fair share, and it gets all the civilians excited. Why do civilians get excited about billionaires paying taxes? Because the concept is if we get the billionaires to pay more taxes, then some of that money is going to find its way to the people who are not billionaires. How has that worked out? Now, it's been 60 years. It's not worked out. They've been preaching it for 60 years. It hasn't worked. But civilians keep buying into it because I don't know why they buy into it. It's a good emotional ploy that the Democrats have held on to. It wins them votes, so I understand it. Conservatives, on the other hand, they want to return power back to the local communities and reduce the power of the federal government. I'm generally on the same side as that argument. I do not want the federal government having control of stuff. I understand there's no such thing as a free lunch. I don't want anything from the government. I want the government to stay the hell out of my business and protect my rights. That's it. They don't grant me rights. They protect my rights. That's all the government is there to do. Protect my human rights and my human God-given rights, and otherwise stay the hell out of my business. That's it. I don't want anything free from the government, especially if it was cooked up by somebody like Kamala Harris, who clearly does not understand business or finance. But continuing, moderates, independents, and suburban parents may see this move as too extreme. So there's a counter here. They say that they're relying on federal protections for special ed programs. That's one that's going to get used a lot in this argument. So the more you hear about the Department of Education argument, you're going to hear special ed and disabled students being mentioned a lot because they get used as an emotional, basically an emotional talking point.
Emotional, damn it.
Because when people hear special education or they hear disabled students, they think of kids who are not capable of speaking up for or defending or fending for themselves. And if Donald Trump and his mean old white men cronies come in there and start destroying things, they're taking food out of the mouth of kids and taking opportunities away from kids. And how could you be such a terrible, cold-hearted individual? And it matches perfectly with the frame that the Democrats have built around Donald Trump for the last 10 years. So that's why you're going to see this argument over and over and over again. So special ed, safety reporting, and financial aid. Also the money thing. Donald Trump and his billionaire friends are just trying to take money away from you so that they can feed themselves and keep themselves rich. Kamala's been saying it. Joe Biden said it. Hillary Clinton said it. Barack Obama says it. They all say it. So they're going to keep using this over and over again because clearly it works. Now, the administration is using proof of concept transfers to build pressure for Congress to vote on full elimination. So they're going to try to get Congress to vote for this. As I said, there is no way the Democrats are going to go for this. No way. Are you going to get enough Democrats, especially in the Senate, maybe in the House of Representatives, but in the Senate, to get enough Democrats to support this? I believe right now it is, last time I looked, what was it, 53 to 47, the Republicans to the Democrats in Congress and in the Senate. You got to get a handful of them. I think it's 7 Democratic senators. And in each state, you only got 2 senators. Get 7 Democratic senators to go along with voting against the continued existence of the Department of Education. That's going to be a tough sell. If Donald Trump can do that one, that'd be the sale of his lifetime. All right, you want to talk about the art of the deal? All right, that'll be a hell of a deal if he's able to get this one done. I don't see it happening before 2026 midterms. But if he gets it done, I will come on here and admit that that's a hell of a deal by Donald Trump. Best deal he ever did if he does that one. Now, Cassidy says he will draft legislation to shutter the ED. Drafting legislation means somebody in Congress is going to come up with basically some documentation that says, here's what we're thinking about doing. We want to pass this as an act and a bill, and we put this on the desk of the president signs it becomes the law. So somebody in Congress comes up with an idea. This is how we get new laws. Someone in Congress comes up with an idea. They get a bunch of their friends in Congress or people who agree with them in Congress, by the way, which is 535 people. They get some of their friends to sponsor, i.e. co-sign the idea. They draft up the documentation of exactly what it's going to be. Then they eventually get it to the point that there's a vote on it. And there's a lot of work that happens in order to get the vote to happen. You get the vote to happen. You get enough votes in the House of Representatives, which is 435 people. If that passes, then it moves over to the Senate, which is exactly 100 people. And if that passes, then it goes to the desk of the president. And if the president signs it, then it becomes law. If the president does not sign it, he can veto it. And it goes back to the Congress and they get to work on it some more. And this is how the whole process works. In a nutshell, there's a whole book could be written on exactly the details of every single thing that can happen in there. You go read up on that on your own time. Now, the administration is saying that the things they've done so far is proof that this can work without hiccups. And technically that's correct, while at the same time they haven't done everything yet. So technically they're right and technically they're not right. So we'll see. And it really doesn't matter. That's not really what the issue is. Not the issue of this isn't going to work if you try to do it to everything. The issue is we don't want it to work. That's the real issue. The Democrats, that's just one of the things they'll throw out there. That's a red herring. It's not going to work if you do it that way. That's not the real issue. Real issue is they don't want this to work at all. So they'll throw out anything and everything that they can just to make sure that this doesn't go through. Because they don't want it on their track record that Donald Trump was able to shutter the Department of Education while they were in Congress. Now, without House and Senate approval, which I just explained, the department still legally exists regardless of transfer. So even if Donald Trump moves everything out of the Department of Education, first of all, the next president could use executive orders to put the shit right back in there. Gavin Newsom come put everything Donald Trump just did, put it right back with the executive order, not going through Congress, number one. And number two, that department will always legally exist until or unless Congress votes to not have it exist. And if Congress votes to not have this exist, there's going to be a lot of Congress people really worried about how they're going to win their next election if this happens on their watch, especially on the political left. That's the reason why I'm dubious that the political right, the conservative Congress people can get liberal Congress people to vote for this. Which ones? Who's going to vote for this? What Democratic senator is going to vote for this? I don't know if it's even one. Maybe I think they get one or two. 7, though? They need 7? I don't think they can get 7. That's 7 different states. Which states that tend to be blue states are going to vote for this through their senator? I'm not sure they get one. Again, 1 or 2 is possible. I don't even know the names of every senator. But 1 or 2 is possible, but 7, I don't think so. So they can hollow out the Department of Education, basically render it completely useless by taking everything the DOE does and just taking everything that it's responsible for and just farming it out to some other aspect of the government. The government is big enough to do that. So where the DOE is there, DOE is Department of Education, by the way. The DOE is there, and the building is there, and it technically still exists. Legally, it still exists, but it's not doing anything because every function that it was performing has now been snatched away from it and reassigned somewhere else. Technically, you could do that to the Department of Education, but you still cannot legally erase the entity without the executive action. Or, without the action of Congress. The executive action is not enough. And remember, executive actions can be undone by the next president with their own executive actions. So Gavin Newsom could come in as president in 2028, technically 2029, and put up a bunch of executive orders in that puts all those same things right back into the Department of Education where they were. Now, if you happen to be a person who works in the Department of Education and you're the one who's getting yo-yoed back and forth while these political entities are battling with each other, you're the one getting inconvenienced the most, but you really don't matter in the big picture of this argument. I'm telling you plain, that's what it is. They don't care. What they care about is winning political points, and if that means yanking you around in the process to win their political points, so be it. Now, you're the one who chose to work for the government. Now you gotta eat the food you decide to put on your plate. Now, Trump argues the states will innovate more effectively than Washington can innovate. I agree with this. I think Donald Trump is right about this. That when you put states in charge of the educational system, you have a better chance if you have 50 different states making their own rules and a smaller bureaucracy, because each state is smaller than the federal government, right? If you got 50 different states doing things their own way and a smaller bureaucracy with less red tape, you're going to get more innovation, more creativity, and better, more creative solutions to the ideas, to the problems that exist. That's just simple logic. I 100% agree with this. This is a strong point that Donald Trump is making. If you as a citizen want more innovative ideas, more creativity, and better problem solving to come out of the educational system, you are better off with those problems being solved at the state level than at the federal level, because for the reasons that I just explained. First of all, you got 50 different ways of doing it because you got 50 different states. You have less bureaucracy and less red tape, which means there's more chance that something actually happens, actually gets done, and actually gets implemented. And you ever try to do something through the federal government? Or try to get somebody from the federal government on the phone, let alone get something done. Or get some paperwork, get a copy of your social security card, a birth certificate. Going through the federal government is a bitch. Going through the state is a little bit less worse. Going through the city or local municipality is a little bit easier. And going through a super local small place, you can actually get something done. The larger the entity, the more bureaucracy, the more red tape, the slower things happen, and the less chance you actually get anything to happen. So just by simple logic, it makes a whole lot of sense to make this a state level thing if you're trying to come up with creative and innovative solutions to problems. So Donald Trump, he gets a strong point on this one. There's not really a strong pushback to this point. He cites things like charter school success, which public schools really don't like charter schools because they make them look bad, CTE programs, and state testing flexibility. This is a really strong point on Donald Trump's side. The only challenge to this really strong point by Donald Trump is that it's a completely logical point. There's no emotion whatsoever involved in this point. And that's the problem with it, because if you want to move the masses of people, you got to give them an emotional reason, not just a logical one. Logical reason requires thinking. And if you ask the masses of people to think, you're not going to win an election. So this is a very strong point by Donald Trump. Unfortunately, is going to fall on deaf ears because most people don't think with the logical sides of their brains. They think with their emotions. So this point is probably not going to get the credit that it deserves, but I just gave it credit. So Donald Trump, if you don't get credit for this point from anyone else, you got credit from me. Now, last, opponents warn of widening inequality if states lose federal guardrails. This is a strong argument on their side. So just gave Donald Trump credit. Here's a strong argument against what he wants to do, which is get rid of the Department of Education. Because if you take everything down to the states, every state gets to do their own thing. Here's the problem. A state like California has a lot more money than a state like Mississippi, or a state like New York has a lot more money than a state like Rhode Island. So different states have different amounts of money, which means the quality of education in one state may be significantly better than in another state, not because there's anything wrong with the people in one state or other people in another state are better people. It's simply because if my state has a ton of money, guess what we can do? We can offer much higher salaries to our teachers, which means theoretically, we're going to recruit much better teachers. We're going to recruit better talent. We're going to have better teachers. They're going to do a better job of teaching. And our students are going to turn out better because they're being taught by better, more qualified people. We got better books. We have better facilities. We can feed them better food. We can give them better places to go play at recess. We can do better everything in our state simply because we got all the money. Whereas your broke ass state, y'all can only afford a bunch of bum ass teachers who ain't got any money. They don't have much knowledge. They don't really want to be at work because they're not making that much money. They give a shabby education to your kids. Your kids get a shitty education. They go to college completely unprepared, and they're all going to college and flunking out because they didn't learn shit in K through 12. Whereas kids from my state are dominating because they got better education. It's not because the parents in my state and the parents of your state are bad versus good, respectively, or that the kids are bad versus or good versus bad. It's simply because my state has money, a ton of it, because of the people who live here has money, and the state you live in, ain't nobody got no money. So the tax dollars that you collect in your state ain't shit to the tax dollars I get in my state. Of course, we're going to dominate you educationally. And now you get this imbalance. The Department of Education is designed to theoretically mitigate that imbalance. Theoretically is designed to mitigate that imbalance because the Department of Education takes a certain amount of money and it evenly distributes, or by need distributes certain amount of money to different states. So if you're in California, y'all have all this money, we'll give you some. But over there in Mississippi, y'all ain't got nothing. We'll give you a little bit more because y'all need it more than they need it. All right, that's what the Department of Education is designed. Again, theoretically, they're designed to do this. The problem is, if you look at a state like, let's just say Mississippi, and look at a state like, let's say California, You look at the education scores in both of those states, despite the existence of the Department of Education, you still have the imbalance in outcomes. So technically, the problem that the DOE exists to theoretically mitigate, they're not mitigating the problem. And here's the reason they're not mitigating the problem, because no matter how much money you throw at a problem, you can't change the quality of the people. And I'm not saying the quality of people in Mississippi are low. What I'm saying is what happens when it comes to education, and I haven't mentioned this yet here today, but I will mention it here. When it comes to the quality of education of students, young people, let's just say K through 8. Let's not even talk about high school. K through 8. You graduate 8th grade, you're like, what, 14 years old? So by the time from when you're born to about 14 years old, these are highly developmental years. The quality of how you turn out has nothing to do with the school, the federal government, or the state that you live in. It has 100% to do with the parents at home. It has nothing to do with money. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. Your parents can be broke. If you have 2 quality parents at home and you're broke, you will be in a good space by the time you're 14 years old. If you have 2 shitty parents at home, or you don't have both parents at home, or you got a crazy home situation, you could be a very talented person and end up in a terrible situation by the time you're 14 years of age. It's all about the parents. The parents are the key here, not the schools. There's another reason why I am in favor of what Donald Trump wants to do in dismantling the Department of Education, because in my opinion, I rather move power and decision-making power as close to the parents as possible. And when you have a federal entity, you will have the power as far away from the parents as possible. Take it away from the federal and make it state level. The power is a little bit closer to the parents. So the parents are right here. Federal government's up here. Take away the federal government, make it state level. Now the power's here. Make it more local level, municipality level is right here. Make it just 100% the parents. Now the power is right there in the parents' pocket. I want the power to be as close to the parents as possible. I don't want the federal government having more say over what happens to your kids than you as a parent has a say over what happens to your kids. Now, technically, you have all the say, because you could technically not put your kids in anything that the Department of Education touches, such as don't put them in a public school, put them in a private school, homeschool your kids. Technically, you could do those things. The issue is homeschooling your kids or putting them in a private school costs money. And if you don't have that money, you don't really have that option. You got to send your kids to public school because you got to go to work all day. They're in public school. That's a federally controlled institution. And that's a federal education that your kids are getting. I don't want my kids getting a federally mandated education from a bunch of teachers who are paid by the federal government. I'm just not a fan of the concept. I know a lot of people do it. I am a product of public schools, as is my sister. But I'm not a fan of the public school system. As a parent with a choice, I'm not a fan of the public school system. I'm not saying there are not good public schools out there. You move to the right neighborhood, which costs money, and you're paying taxes there, which costs money. Yes, you can send your kids to an amazing public school, but can you afford to live in that neighborhood? Can you afford to live in that place? All right, different story. What if you're just a normal person in a normal place and you don't like the federal system, but you can't afford to homeschool your kids and you can't afford a private school and you can't afford to move to where there are better public schools? What you going to do? Well, the answer is you ain't going to do shit. You are subject to what the federal government wants you to do. This is the situation. That's the reason why I'm not a fan of the federal government deciding education. I want the federal government telling my kids what to believe and what's true and what's not true anyway. I don't want the federal government doing it when I can do it. There's nobody in the federal government who could teach my kids better than me. And there shouldn't be anybody in the federal government who could teach your kids better than you. That's just my personal opinion. All right, a different conversation for a different day. So, as I just explained, poor districts in poor states depend heavily on federal funds so they can stay afloat. Now, if you live in a state that has money, then you don't have this problem. But if you live in a state that doesn't have money, then you absolutely have this problem. This is your biggest problem because you can't afford to, you personally and the state that you live in can't afford to give the same quality of education where you are that some other kid across the country can get, again, through no necessarily fault of your own. Necessarily no fault of your own. So this is the argument in favor of the Department of Education. All right, what do we do about the money? And this is a question Donald Trump has to answer. President Trump must answer this question. What do we do about the money, President Trump? Okay, it's fine. You don't like the federal government having control? Understood. You rather give power back to the parents? Also understood. You don't like the woke ideology? Also understood there. However, President Trump, one state has way more money than another state, so they have much higher quality education over here than they have over there. What is your answer to that? What do we do about that? He must answer that question. I don't know what the answer is. He has to come up with an answer. Because if he doesn't have a satisfactory answer, then this whole plan could fall apart just on that alone. Because you can't just say, okay, this broke ass state over here, y'all just going to have a lower quality education because y'all ain't got no money. Whereas the state over here where everybody has money, they get a higher quality education. How are we going to make the kids suffer because of that? If the DOE was somewhat mitigating that discrepancy, and now you're going to eliminate the mitigation, we can't just say we're going to eliminate the mitigation and just leave it at that and say, hey, good luck. We can't do that. We need an answer for that, Donald Trump. He got to come up with an answer. So any of you know Donald Trump, y'all send him the message. He got to come up with an answer to that question. All right, that one we can't just leave on the table to not be addressed. He must address that question. Without addressing that question, this whole plan could fall apart. All that said, everybody, let's get to the comments. Let's see what we got over here. I usually start these lives at 8 o'clock, by the way. We started at like 9 o'clock here today, but usually I start at 8 o'clock. And just in case any of you came in late or any of you are coming in for the first time, never heard me before, we usually start at 8. We started at 9 today. So Whit Michelle said, do you think Marjorie Greene is leaving as a political ploy? What do you think about Mamdani trying to be friends with Trump? Well, Whit Michelle, I talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday. I talked about Zohran Mamdani the week before that. So you should watch my replays on my YouTube channel, but I'll give you short answers. Do I think her leaving is a political ploy? What do you mean by ploy? I mean, it's a move. She's moving. She's doing it for a reason. If that's what you're asking. Yeah, she has her reasons, what she explained in her 10-minute video. Do I think she's going to do something next? I don't think she's done in politics. She's 51, which is relatively young for politics. I mean, Bernie Sanders is 83. So she got another 30 years to be in politics. And she only been in it for 5. So I think she's going to do something else. I don't know what. What I think about Mamdani trying to friends with Trump, I don't think he's trying to be friends with Trump. I think they're having a political meeting, which they should, because he has been elected mayor of the biggest city in the damn country. Donald Trump is from New York, and Donald Trump is the president. So it's only right that the two of them meet and they have a respectful conversation, even though they may disagree on many things politically. They probably agree on several things. Liberals and conservatives tend to agree on more things than they disagree on. It's just people tend to focus on the disagreement. So I don't think Mamdani's trying to be friends with Trump. I don't think that characterization is accurate. I think they're both doing politically what they both are supposed to do and what they should do. And whether you're on the left or the right, whether you're a democratic socialist like Mamdani or a MAGA conservative like Trump, you should be happy to see the two of them having a conversation, because that's what politics is supposed to be. We disagree, but we still have a conversation. We can have a respectful conversation, even though we disagree on certain elements, and we will find in the midst of that conversation that we agree on many elements as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Nurse J. Beasy said, did you go over DOE reclassification on nurses? No, I didn't, because that would be like a super duper detailed, Nurse J. Beasy. I did not go that deep. Aaron Diskoff said, woke in a world of people that are asleep. No, that would be awake. Woke and awake ain't the same thing, Aaron. I know what you're saying, but no, it's not the same thing. Aaron said, please Google what the Department of Education does. No, they do a lot of things. You can write a whole book on what the Department of Education does. Why would I Google that? Tana said, RN, all the minorities I know are conservatives and whites I know are liberal. Oh, right now. Where you live? And where do you know these people from? Sarara Jamela said, many school employment agencies are not for profit and many don't offer enough hours for benefits. School employment agencies? What do you mean? What is a school employment agency? Are you talking like substitute teachers or are you talking full-time jobs? What's a school employment agency? What do they do? Asking OG said, I always resented the idea that I couldn't compete with white men growing up. So I did. Yeah, well, who gave you that idea? Asking OG. That's my question to you. Edward said, look, I spent 25 years in the military and I saw racial discrimination. Okay. I spent 0 years in the military and I've seen racial discrimination. What's your point? Aaron said, Google you already said that. Don't spam my comments. Aaron Disc Golf. Edward said, anyone who says it was no discrimination against race is full of shit. Well, that's a straw man. Strawberry cheesecake. There are very few people, I think logical thinking people, who will say that there is no discrimination. What people say, they may not be able to articulate it as clearly as I do, is that yes, while there is discrimination, that is not an excuse nor a reason for you to fail or think that you are lesser or to have lower expectations for yourself. And as a black person, I can say that to black people. It's harder for... Oh, I see. See? Yes, I see. Everything is invisible. Wow. Everything you are. I see. All right, relax. So, Edward Blassingame, your point here is a straw man. Nobody's saying that there's no discrimination or that there was no discrimination. Discrimination still exists to this very day. And by the way, discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. I discriminate all the time. All right, if I walk into a restaurant and there's a pretty girl sitting to my left and there's a gay guy sitting to my right and they're both staring at me because they're both interested, I'm going to discriminate against the gay guy and I'm going to go talk to the pretty girl. Why? Because I'm a heterosexual man. So discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. And yes, there is discrimination. That is not necessarily a crime, depending on who's doing it. Individuals discriminating is not a crime. An entity discriminating can be a crime. Like you can't say, I won't rent to you because you're black, or you can't get this job because you're white, technically. But to just say anyone who says it is full of shit is a base level argument that lacks logical substance. You got to come with something better than that. Aaron said, you ignore facts. How funny that works. That's a straw man, Aaron. You're trying to get the cheesecake. Here's your slice.
Strawberry cheesecake.
Technically, every human being ignores facts because if you were to acknowledge every single fact, you would never have time to go to sleep, let alone time to eat, or let alone time to talk about anything else. So I'm not ignoring any facts. I'm using the facts that are necessary for the points that I'm making here today. But if I was to make or explain every single fact that is germane to the topic that I'm talking about here today, this would literally be a 500-hour live stream because there are thousands of different facts that relate to the Department of Education and education itself in the United States of America. So discernment is about picking which facts make the most sense for the point that you're trying to make. So when anyone hears an argument that they dislike and they say, well, you're ignoring certain facts. Well, of course you're ignoring certain facts. Everybody ignores certain facts. They pick the facts that make the most sense for the point that they want to make. If you want to make a different point, use different facts, then you know what you can do, Aaron. You get out of my comments, start your own live stream, and you share those facts. Then you see if there's anybody who want to hear what you have to say. Asking OG said, test scores can be objective as well. Technically, yes, they are. You're right about that. The reason I don't like test scores as an objective measurement is, first of all, they're standardized tests, and human beings are not standardized. Every human is different. Human beings don't all think the same way. We're not all interested in the same things. So when we were in school, we had to take classes like, when I was in school, I had to take art class for what? You had to take gym class. Not everybody wants to be in the gym. You had to take, what's some other classes that were for nothing? Chemistry class, calculus class. We took all these classes for a whole bunch of nothing just so you could sit there and check a box and say that you took the class. And then you get tested on these standardized measurements, but I'm not a standard person. The people who do best on standardized tests are the ones who do great in school. They get high SAT scores. They get high grades in classes. Then they get the highest level of graduation. Then they go to the biggest schools, and then they go work in the education system, or they go work in corporate America, or they become lawyers. All right, this is who these people become. And then they get looked at as these are necessarily the best. That's because they were able to work in a standard way. But people who don't work in standard ways, they get looked at as if something is wrong with them. They get marked as behavioral problems. They get put in special ed classes. They get their parents called to the school. They get sent to the counselor's office. They get lower grades, average and below average grades. They don't get into good colleges, maybe don't even go to college. They may end up dropping out of college. And some of these people end up becoming mediocre people in life because maybe that's how they were conditioned to be. Maybe they actually were mediocre, and some of them become entrepreneurs and they start businesses. They become the Steve Jobses and the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Elon Musks of the world. And again, it's because the system is designed for standardization. So if you are not matching the standardization standard, then you are looked at or labeled sometimes rather, as if something is wrong with you. So that's why I'm not a fan of the test scores being looked at as objective, even though they are objective. Asking OG, I don't like the concept. Also because teachers, knowing that their school is being measured by test scores, they can just teach things based on what they know the kids are going to have to know on the test, rather than things that are functionally useful for those kids when they go out into the real world. Those are two different ways of teaching. I can teach my kid 100% just what's going to be on the test so that they ace the test, and then they go get into a good college and they ace everything in college. But then when they get out of school, they go into the real world. Well, everything's not a test. And the real world is an open book test where you have to learn how to think, not just answer questions by rote. So there's a whole lot of things that go into the educational system that I'm not a fan of based on the way it's currently constructed, if you can't tell. Edward Blassingame said, the day I said and put on paperwork and writing I was Native American, I moved up the chain. Well, good for you. Smart move by you. Are you actually Native American, or were you lying? Either way, good move by you. Anastasia, thanks for the lightning bolt. Tom She said, you think that you should keep the current status quo while kids here can't read or do math. What is the current status quo to which you are referring? Tom 22. I said, I like the concept of dismantling the Department of Education. That's the opposite of the status quo. Aaron, this is your last warning to stop spamming my comments. Sorry, you got to go because you posted the same thing like 16 times. You got to go now. So moderators, get this guy, Aaron Disc Golf. He got to get out of here. All right, there we go. Asking OG said, if anything, dark color is an advantage. Adversity builds character. Then you put a question mark. I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. I need you to clarify your question. Anastasia, congrats on member level 14. Toga, New York said woke should not be in school education. Well, they don't call it that. They don't call it woke. They just call it other things. They teach the same thing. They just call it different things. I've heard college professors say this, that we can still teach the things we want to teach, such as, what was that thing they were doing? Critical race theory, DEI, wokeness. That I've heard college professors say this, that even if we technically can't teach it, we'll still teach it. We'll just call it something else so that we can hide it. And they do this on purpose. And they announce it to each other, like, hey, we're not supposed to teach this, but here's the way we can get away with it anyway. Asking OG said, in today's world, it's not just needed. It's just not needed. Nothing can hold a human down. Well, see, that's something that has to be taught at home. That people can't just read that in a comment on the internet and believe it. It has to be taught to you every single day. Asking OG said, AI is my lawyer. Well, until you go to court, AI is your lawyer. Jose Illy, thanks for the follow. Asking OG said, but there are bad lawyers with holes in their shoes. I don't know what you're responding to when you say that. Saroa Jamela said, do you know why school employment agencies are not for profit and don't provide enough benefit hours? I asked you to tell me more about that. So you probably left this comment before you heard my comment. Let's see. Moderators, if you ever see somebody who's spamming my comments, they post the same thing over and over again, just get rid of them. Either mute them for the day or you can block them. Sometimes we can start out by muting them for the day. Now, if they come in the next day doing the same thing, then you block them. But moderators, you don't have to wait for my word to do that. Just get rid of them. Do Free said, but it's for the purpose of control. What are you referring to? Asking OG said, Kamala loves hot sauce and fried chicken. Well, she claims to. Maybe she actually does. But why we would need to know that I don't know why we need to know that in order to vote for her. XTR said they want everyone completely dependent on government. Generally, that is correct. Tana said everything is about control. Nikki Loke said that's not true about the parent statement. What parent statement? What was the statement? Lori, thanks for the follow. Kami said, I asked a Dem and they said, what's the government for then? Asking OG said, got to pay the cost to be the boss. That's true. Aaron, before he got blocked, said, who had a better economy, Kamala or Trump? Kamala didn't have an economy. She was never president. Asking OG said, I'll get my own to nephew. Stephanie said, but holds degree in both business and finance. Who are you talking about? You talking about Kamala Harris? I need you to clarify who you're talking about. Kami said, who had a lower unemployment rate, Trump or Biden? I don't know. You tell me. I'm not employed, so I really don't care about the unemployment rate as a general point. But let's just say it was Trump. What's your point? And let's say it was Biden. Also, what's your point? Asking OG said, Gavin Newsom might just as well move to Israel and convert to Judaism. But they say that about every president. Every president gets that criticism. They say it about Trump right now. So, I mean, Asking OG said, never let school get in the way of your education. Mark Twain. Did Mark Twain say that? I'm sure he gets credit for it. But yeah, it's a legitimate point, whoever said it. Sorella Jamela, you asked the same question 3 times. You don't have to post a question in here more than once. I will read it. Now, as y'all can see, when I'm doing my monologue, I'm not looking at comments. So you leave your comment 1 time. Then a second time, maybe, if you think I actually didn't see it. And then don't keep leaving the same comment. Okay, so any of you didn't know, now you know. Do not keep leaving the same comment over and over again. I will see it. You see there's a lot of comments in here. I'm just scrolling from oldest to newest to get to it. Barb said, I agree with Donald Trump and I have kids in school. Fair enough. Vince's Toy Gallery said, I think you would get more viewers if you put up a catchy prompt above your head. Okay. I've registered your opinion. John Rennell said, why were the Border Patrol not held accountable for letting 20 million illegals in our country? Because Border Patrol answers to the president, essentially, and the president said, let them in. So, held accountable by who? Kathy said, Carter's GA competed with AI and M's for last in education. Carter's GA? I don't know what, I need more context what you're talking about. Sorella says CT makes everyone pay school taxes. Is that Connecticut? I think everybody pays school taxes anyway. If you pay taxes, you pay taxes, depending on what state you're in. Sophie the cat laughed at broke ass state. But yeah, that's what it is. If your state is broke, then you have lower quality schools because you got lower quality teachers and weaker facilities. That's how it is. And you ever been to an HBCU campus? They like the projects. And you ever been to an HBCU campus? I'll wait till I get to the bottom of the comments because I really want to see any of you have seen them. They don't have as much money as the PWIs, which stands for predominantly white institutions, and the campuses reflect exactly how much money they have. John said private schools rule. Over public schools, I would agree. But there's a positive and negative to it, depending on who your child is and how you are. John said, legacies are built around habits. I agree with that. It depends on which habits. Dubel said, the Department of Education has failed in plenty of time to improve things family key. I agree with that. XTR said, you can have one parent that turned out great. My kids did. Fair enough, XTR. You might be biased because they're your kids. I'm halfway joking. You're right about that. Yes, you can be great and have one parent turn out great. I'm using what I said as an example. Yes, there are single parent kids who turn out excellent. And I know some single parents who are doing a good job with their kids. Glenn, thanks for the follow. Taylor Marie, thanks for the follow. Lauren, good morning. Glenn said, you are right. Thank you. Sorella said, truant children call schools money. Yeah, that's probably right. Teray Alvarez said, you're right 100%. Thank you. Glenn said, which is why Trump wants it to return to state and local control. Yes, amongst other reasons. I said, yes, I was in public. My kids are in private. Yes, I was in public too. Addie David, thanks for the share. LMP said, we are thankful that our son is in charter school. Yeah, it's hard to get into a charter school, but glad your son got in. Sorella said, do you know, you asked a question like 5 times. So I asked you a question. Let's see. I lost my spot in the comments. Barb said, you are correct. That is why we decided to homeschool the grandchildren, and I will help. Well, that's great. John Rell said, don't have kids. Take care of yourselves. You're here. Vincent Toy Gallery said, I put my kid in the charter school and spend time each night teaching. I want my kid to be smarter. Good idea. Tara Mills said, the federal government doesn't make anything better. That I agree with. America said, give the power to the people, not a suit. Well, power is taken. It's not given. But overall, I get what you're saying. Donna, thanks for the follow. Christopher Barker said, I miss your topic today, but I hope you and your family have a nice Thanksgiving. Well, thank you. Whit Michelle said, great answer. Mondani stated when he was running for office that he was coming for Trump. Yeah, that's political theater. That's theater. Anything that a politician says during the campaign season when they're talking shit about each other is the same as like boxers before a boxing match talking about each other. They just say it to hype up the crowd and get everybody excited so people think they really don't like each other because that gets you excited enough to go buy the pay-per-view and they all make money. Both fighters make money no matter who wins. That's all that is. So next time you see politicians talking about each other during the campaign, look at them like boxers talking about each other before the fight. This is the exact same thing. But a lot of people tend to think that they're for real because they sell it as if they really don't like each other. Sometimes they really don't, but most of the time that's not the case. Christopher Barker says, substitute teachers in my area work almost every day. Yeah, substitute teaching is a pretty good job once you're established and you're known because there's always somebody who's not at work. Dan Albine Dalton said, the money imbalances is not intrinsically linked to education. Yes, this is why I was saying, that's why I kept using the word theoretically. More money theoretically leads to a better education. But the real key is who's at home, not how much money the state has. I thought I said that. Amy Morse said that was sweet. Lil Wild Mom said, can you talk about the changing of calling professions such as nurses, PT, OT, etc., non-professionals? I haven't heard of that, so I can't talk about it. America said, Department of Education is our single biggest failure. Just look around. Is it our single biggest failure? I don't know. I think there's a competition for the biggest failure of the federal government. I think the tax situation might be worse than that. And the fact that we have homeless people and veterans who they're homeless who after serving the country, I think that might be a bigger failure than the Department of Education. But I get what you're saying. Mindy said, you're a great dad. Thank you. Sorella said, Kelly Agency, EA Advance are two large not-for-profit organizations hiring subs, drivers, cafe. Yeah, so my question was, what kind of employment were you referring to? Or so you finally gave me that answer after you posted the same question 6 times. Christopher Barker said, I really believe anyone can be what they want to be if they work hard enough for it. Well, you can believe that, Christopher. I think 98% of things, yes, you can be anything you want if you work hard enough for it. Now, if you're 5'6" and Asian and you can't jump, you can't play in the NBA no matter how hard you work. So that's why I said 98%. 2% of things you can't be without a certain level of baseline talent and opportunity. But everything else is pretty much open to anybody. Anybody technically could become a doctor, for example, if you go to school and you do all the stuff. Yes, that I get. Alyssa said, I'll go up the nonchalant roast. I'm not trying to roast. I'm just answering the questions. James Chervon would say, could you talk about the Mark Kelly issue? Who is Mark Kelly and what's the issue? So technically I can't because I don't even know what you're talking about. Rick Thomas said, my son was straight A's through high school, but lost when he started at UGA. What do you mean he lost? What did he lose? Sorella said, I had no idea. Like, I saved questions to return to later. Sorry for spamming. Well, it doesn't save the questions. They just comments. I just scroll through the comments. So I read the comments from oldest to newest. So I scroll back as far as I can. I can't always go back to the top because there's too many comments. Rick Thomas said, thank you, Dre, for removing Aaron. Well, Aaron removed himself by spamming my comments. And in the future, moderators will take care of him. America said, that's exactly why I'll never send my kids to college. Fair enough. By the time your kids are that age, they might be deciding for themselves, don't you think? And it depends on why they go to college. My children, why would they want to go to college? I want to know why. I want to know what they're going to study. And also I want to know how much are they expecting me to pay for it. Now, if they get a full scholarship, you go wherever you want, do whatever you want. That's not my money. Technically, you earned that free ride. You earned it by your performance in school or in sports or whatever you did. Now, if I got to pay for it, now I have a say. If you want me to pay for you to go to school, then I have a say on whether you go and where you go. Now, if I'm not paying for it and you got 100 scholarship offers and you can pick whatever school you want, whichever one you want to go to, you go. All right, it's out of my hands, not my business, because I ain't paying for it. But if I'm paying for it, I have a say. That's my rule. Sarah L., thanks for the share. Leah said, yes, sir. Thank you. On mute block going forward, I gave him warnings. All right. Thank you, Leah. Go Wild Mom, thanks for the follow. Turner Frank said, I was conditioned by my mother that I had to work hard just to be normal because of my color. Well, what's your color? Turner Frank. Amy Morris, thanks for the follow. Turner said, but in truth, hard work is rewarded no matter the color. I learned that in the corporate world. Generally, that is correct. Yes, hard work is rewarded. If you work hard and you're doing the right thing, generally, you will get some benefits from that. That's not the entire game, but it is a good start. It's a good habit to have, is being willing to work hard and do the right things in given the environment that you are in. CC, thanks for the lightning bolt. Sorella said, I've only been here once before today. No problem, Sorella. I didn't think you were spamming on purpose. I think you just didn't know. No problem. 11 Bravo said, play the strawberry cheesecake, please.
Strawberry cheesecake.
Greg Graham said they have damn good bands, though. Who are you talking about? Noel's, good morning. Turner said, I went to Alabama A&M in 04-08, definitely lacking funds. So I'm assuming, Turner and Frank, you're a black. Alabama A&M is an HBCU, right? So, and you've been to an HBCU campus. They look like the projects. Now, I've been to a few HBCU campuses. They look like the projects. I remember I was in Philadelphia. I used to work at this mall called the Granite Run Mall. It's south of Philadelphia. It's like near Chester. It's outside of the city, but to the south and to the west. And this is back when, like, to this day, like, my head's bald because I shave my head every day. But if I didn't shave my head, I would have hair. But I used to have braids. This is like right after college. And this girl who worked at the same job as me, because I worked at Foot Locker, I told her I needed somebody to braid my hair. And she said, I'll braid your hair. She didn't work with me. She worked in the mall. I worked in the mall. She worked in the mall. Different story. And she was like, yeah, I'll braid your hair. and she was in college. I think she went to Cheney. It was either Cheney or Lincoln. I can't remember what school it was. Both of them are HBCUs. And she was like, just come to my dorm building on your whatever day it was. The next day I'll braid your hair. So I drive over there because wasn't far from the mall where I worked at. And I parked my car and I'm walking through the campus just to get to her dorm building. And I'm like, why do I feel like I'm in the hood somewhere? I felt like I was in the ghetto. It was dudes standing on the corner staring at me like they were dealing, like they were hustling. And I was walking past their turf. Like that's how they were looking at me. I'm like, y'all in college? Because I went to college. I went to a PWI. I went to Penn State. And Penn State didn't look anything like this campus. I'm like, this is a college campus. And you can smell weed. I'm walking through the dorms. It felt like I was walking through a jail. And walking inside the building felt like I was walking through jail. Like people's doors were open, there's music playing, you hear weed smoke, people staring at you, like looking at you like they can't believe why you are walking through their building, like they own it. I'm like, this is a dorm? My dorms were nothing like this. And this is on the HBCU campus. I'm not saying they're all like this, but the ones I've seen several others. And driving through their campuses, you don't feel like it's a college campus. When you drive through Penn State, you know you're at Penn State. You walk through the University of Miami, you know you're on a college campus. You walk through, I've been to so many colleges, North Carolina State, University of Pittsburgh. When you walk through these campuses, the actual campus, you know where you're at. I remember being in Knoxville. I was walking through University of Tennessee. It looks like and feels like what you would expect a college campus to look like if you Googled it on the internet. You walk through some HBCU campuses, you're like, what the hell is this? This is a college? Anyway, that's what I've seen in HBCUs. The whole point being they don't have as much money as PWIs, but their campuses look like shit, in my opinion. Oh, Greg, you were talking about the HBCU bands. Yes, they do have good bands. So they say good music comes out of the soul. It comes from the soul, and soul is built through struggle. And if you go to an HBCU campus, you are struggling. No wonder they got good bands. The campus is so damn nasty, you might as well make good music. You got to have something positive to look forward to. Tana said, if everyone has their common sense, we'd be living in a much more stable world. Well, I agree with that. Let's see. Kuya said, when you homeschool your children, how are they able to get in sports like football and softball? Well, nowadays, there are leagues just for homeschool kids, number one. Number two, when it comes to football and softball, these days, the way things have transitioned is that the biggest sports teams are not the school level teams. They're like the AAU level. I don't know what the term is for it, but like AAU level. So if your son plays basketball, for example, the most important basketball team he plays on is not his high school's team. The most important team he plays on is his AAU or club team. This club level is what I'm talking about. So your son or daughter can join the club, soccer team, tennis team, track team, football team, basketball team, regardless of what school they go to, because the clubs recruit certain types of players. So all the best players from Miami could all play on the same Miami club team. They're in the same grade, but they go to different high schools. But the most important school is that club school, because that club, they go play in the big tournaments, and those are the tournaments where you get recruited at, not necessarily your high school. Even if you play for your high school might be garbage or your high school might be great, but the best competition is at the club level because that's where they recruit, and all the best players are all put in the same place. Whereas opposed to school, sometimes you just end up on a certain school's team just because you go to school there, not for any sport-related reason. It didn't used to be like that 25 years ago, but now it's like that. So, Kuya, that's an answer to your question. John Henry said, we need to stop looking in the rearview mirror and continue to look through the windshield. Generally correct. Vince's Toy Gallery said, I'm a 5'6" Asian that can't jump. LOL. Yes, exactly. So you can't play in the NBA no matter how hard you work. But 98% of every other thing you want to do, you can do it. But you're not going to play in the NBA. So that's what I mean. Rick Thomas said he didn't know how to study at college. Interesting. I mean, if he was getting straight A's in high school, that means he knows how to study. I mean, maybe he just didn't study, Rick. Were you there when he was not doing well in college, Rick? I think he was doing some other things besides not studying. Just my theory. My theory is that he discovered college life and he just decided not to study. Rick, that's just my guess. Because I went to college, so I know what happens when you get on a college campus. Things change. It ain't high school. Barb said, you're exactly right on the college situation. It depends on the child whether they go or not. Yeah, by that age, and again, if I'm paying for it, then I got to say. Now, if I'm not paying for it, you do what you want to do. Turner said, I am black. Yeah, I guess when you said you went to Alabama A&M. Ain't too many white people walking around that campus. We're at 98,000 likes, folks. Barb said, what is an HBCU? It is an historically black college and university. Those are schools that were basically created to give black people an opportunity to pursue higher education back in the day when black students were not allowed or welcomed at colleges, which were mostly white. So a PWI stands for predominantly white institution. That would be like the school I went to, Penn State, University of Miami, University of Florida, Tennessee, USC. Those schools we call them PWIs as opposed to HBCUs. So HBCUs are mostly on the East Coast and in the South of the United States. You don't see too many HBCUs on the West Coast, but they're mostly on the East Coast and the South. So Kamala Harris's college, which was it Howard or Hampton? Kamala Harris go to Howard or Hampton? I think it was Hampton. Then you got Howard University. Those are up in the DC area. Then you have like Tuskegee. You have Morehouse. You got Alabama A&M. You have North Carolina A&T. You have Bethune-Cookman. There's a bunch of HBCUs, mostly on the East Coast and mostly in the South, because that's where a lot of black Americans were. So that's where black people went to college at first when they couldn't go to the white institutions. Nowadays, you got black kids going to all different kinds of schools, including myself. But you still have HBCUs, and a lot of black students still go to HBCUs for whatever reason that they want to. Maybe for the education, maybe because their parents went there, maybe because a lot of their friends are there, maybe because they're just comfortable being around all black people. And everybody has their own reasons. And there's nothing wrong with an HBCU. If you want to go to HBCU, go. I mean, Spike Lee went to an HBCU, Samuel L. Jackson, Martin Luther King, P. Diddy, before all that stuff. P. Diddy went to HBCU. Kamala Harris. I mean, I'm not a fan of Kamala, but she's no bum. She went to HBCUs. A bunch of people went to HBCUs and turned out to be very successful people. So I'm not knocking the concept of an HBCU. But what I am saying is that I've driven through their campuses and they look like shit. They look like the projects. And if they take that as a diss, hey, if I'm wrong, send me some photos. I've been to enough of them. I know what I'm talking about. So Turner Frank right here, right after that, said, facts. LOL, my college campus definitely look like a project. They do like the projects. I've been to the projects and I've been to HBCUs and I can't tell the difference. So Difference Maker also answered the question. Okay, so a bunch of you white folks don't know what HBCU is. So it's a historically black college and university. And the reason why they look like the projects is because they don't have money. They don't have money. Most colleges get their money not from, technically they get it from tuition, but that's not really where they get their money from. They get their money from their donors. PWIs, which are the colleges that most of you know about, those are predominantly white institutions. So if it's not an HBCU, it's a PWI. It's basically only two different types of colleges. You got HBCUs and PWIs. Most PWIs get their money from donors. Donors are people who went to that school or somehow, some way want to be affiliated with the school. They didn't even have to go there. And they give money to the school. Now, why do you just give money to a school? Same way that, who was it? Jeff Bezos' ex-wife gave a bunch of money to an HBCU like 3 weeks ago. You give money to a school because it's a charitable donation. You can write that off on your taxes. Basically saves you money on taxes. That's why they do it. And you buy influence. So if I was to give $1 million to the University of Miami tomorrow, they might build a building in my name. I probably had to be more than $1 million. They might do something. They might name a little street corner after me or something like that, or put my name on a brick inside the building for $1 million. So it's a little bit for my ego. It's a little bit for buying influence, because if I get them $1 million, then I get to have some say in how things go in certain areas of how they operate. So I'm buying influence, and also go to my accountant and I can get that written off on my taxes as a charitable donation. This is not financial advice. Please speak to a qualified financial professional for making any financial decisions. So that's the reason that PWIs have the money, because their alumni, the people who went there, they go make money doing other stuff, and they give money back to the school that they came from so they can be part of the community. So they give back to the community to help the next generation out and also to help themselves. So this is how in college sports, for example, they have the name, image, and likeness deal now, and athletes are making like $1 million playing college sports. Where's that money coming from? That money is coming from the donors of the school. So the college that I went to, I'm still on their alumni email list. I went to 2 different schools, Penn State Abington, Penn State Altoona. 2 campuses within the Penn State system. And both of them have sent emails saying that they are raising a fund. Raising a fund means we're trying to collect money. We want you, alumni, to give money to us, the school, and we're going to use that money to support the athletic program. So we need people to give money so we can support the soccer team and the basketball team and the football team. What they want to use that money for is eventually, if they had enough of it, they would use that to give name, image, and likeness deals to their players. Technically, that's what they want to do. Now, they don't have enough money yet. Smaller schools don't have the kind of money where the players get that kind of stuff. So if you're at a small school like a Division III, you might not get any money for name, image, and likeness. So you might get $500 a month. That's a good deal for you. Now, if you play at University of Miami and you're the quarterback, you might get $3 million. Where's that money coming from? Again, it's coming from the donors. Those are the people who went to UM and or they live in Miami and they want influence. They go write a check for $10 million. And then the school uses that $10 million however they want to use it. And that's the reason why they do it with sports, is because sports, they compete. So UM wants to be better than Florida State, and Florida State wants to be better than the University of Florida, and they're all trying to dominate the state of Florida. So the donors in each one of those schools give more and more money because they're all trying to beat each other. So they do it out of competition. They're spending money and competing against each other, and who can spend the most money, because whoever spends the most money gets the best players, and the best players usually win you games. And don't forget the coaches. Coaches get salaries of $10, $20, $50 million, not per year, but they're big contracts. The coach at Penn State got fired in the middle of the season this year. From Penn State, in the middle of the season, he got fired. 2 weeks ago, he just got hired at, what was it, Virginia Tech? Where did James Franklin get hired? I think it was Virginia Tech. They gave him a $41 million contract after he got fired like 5 weeks before that. He was so bad, he got fired 3 weeks into the season, and he got a new job for $40 million 5 weeks later. That's the sports world. If you can get a job in there, there's a lot of money to be made. So that's the answer to the HBCU question. And they don't have the money because, well, frankly, black people don't have, black people as a general rule, black people in America don't have as much money as white people in America. And there are many more white people. So if you just get all the black people and all the white people, if they all had the same amount of money, white people would still have more because it's 5 times more white people than black people. So that's the reason why PWIs they can collect more money than HBCUs can collect. On top of the fact that in the black community, we tend to look up to athletes and entertainers as the quote unquote successful people. A lot of them don't give money to colleges. That's just the reality. White people who go and make money and become successful in doing things like building businesses, etc., they give money back to colleges. Black people don't do that. Black people, well, they do a lot of things, but they don't give money to colleges. There's a lot of black people who become famous didn't go to college. Jay-Z didn't go to college. Beyonce didn't go to college. LeBron James didn't go to college. Doesn't mean they can't give money to schools, but that's generally not the culture of giving money to colleges. Some white person who's from fucking Oklahoma, grows up in Oklahoma, goes to school at Oklahoma, maybe plays a little bit of sports, but not serious, never plays pro. They go and build a business doing making medical devices. They make $100 million. They go write a check for $10 million to the University of Oklahoma. And it's part of their culture. Then their kids grow up and they make money. They do the same thing. It's part of their culture. They're taught to do this. Not even taught, but it's like expected. Whereas in the black community, that's not one of the expectations to go give money to a college. Which one? What college you going to give money to? Maybe you'll give it to an HBCU if you went to one. And what are they going to do with the money? Well, look at the HBCU campus. Where's that money going? They can't compete in sports. You don't see any HBCUs playing for the national championship in basketball or football. They don't have the resources. They don't have the facilities. Yeah, black people can play, but a lot of the best black athletes, where do they go? They go to Duke, North Carolina, Florida State, Alabama. Those ain't HBCUs. The best black athletes don't go to HBCUs. They go to PWIs because the PWIs got more money. They have better facilities. You got a better chance of getting seen. And you got a better chance of getting yourself ready for the next level where you want to go. So there's a lot of reasons why the money discrepancy between the HBCUs and the PWIs. As you can see, there's a whole lot of conversation that can be had on that subject. Courtney said homeschool kids can still play on school teams. Okay, I didn't know that. Interesting. Turner Frank said for sports, a lot of park districts and small organizations have leagues that all kids can join. Yes, of course. Yes, of course you can play at the local rec center. I'm talking about like, let's say high school level if you're trying to play in college, like where you really need to be seen like for real. That's the club level. That's AAU, those kind of games, those kind of leagues. That's where you really get seen if you're trying to get recruited. And you go to events, exposure camps, things like that. Travel teams. Yes, what? Marie Reyes, travel teams. It's another term I was looking for. Christopher Barker said it as well. Travel ball gets more recognition in high school. Yes, so the travel team is where the real opportunity is. So any of you has a kid who's 14 to 18 and they're trying to play a sport seriously, you know you got to be at those. They got to be on those travel teams. They got to pay. You got to pay for that. You got to go to the games. You traveling. You paying for flights. You're paying for bus trips. You're paying for hotel stays. That's where the opportunity's at. Courtney said, my son's middle school baseball team has 3 homeschool kids on it. Okay, fair enough. Where is that? Where are you located? Pat LeGrand. I think you're in Tennessee, right, Courtney? Pat LeGrand, thanks for the follow. Difference Maker said, what would you advise a father of a 2-year-old boy in terms of athletics and scholastics? Well, Difference Maker, my son, who you heard earlier, he's 3 years old. My advice is absolutely nothing. Do nothing. He's 2 years old. Difference Maker, you asking that question way too early. You're about 10 years early for that question. Do absolutely nothing. Let your son become whoever he wants to become. He might not want to play sports. If my son doesn't want to play sports, that's completely okay. My son does not need to be an athlete. I was already an athlete. So it's not like I need my son to do anything that I didn't do. He can be whatever he wants to be. If he wants to play sports, I'll support him and help him. And maybe I'll train him a little bit. I won't be a coach. I'll train him a little bit. But if he don't want to play, that's all good too. My son needs to know personal development, personal finance, and he needs to understand entrepreneurship. Those are 3 things he must do. Sports is optional. And I just saw this video of Michael Jordan. He was on Oprah like back when he was playing. Michael Jordan was on Oprah. And he said he didn't start playing basketball until he was 12. And he became Michael Jordan. So it's not like they got to start early because that means that gives them the best chance of being successful. Maybe every person is unique, but it's not about starting early. It's about what natural abilities does this person have? And once they decide to play a sport, are they going to dedicate themselves to actually getting better? Like Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan, not because his parents were driving him around the AAU tournaments. Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan because he was Michael Jordan. Meaning, I don't mean talent-wise, meaning Michael Jordan wanted to be good at basketball because he wanted to, he became good. I'm not Michael Jordan, but I wanted to be good at basketball. My parents never sent me to an AAU tournament. I never had a coach. I never had a trainer. I never had any specialized equipment. I grew up playing ball on the street. I became a professional athlete because I wanted to become one, not because my parents were doing anything special for me. They damn sure did not. They weren't trying to stop me, but they weren't doing anything extra. And Michael Jordan is pretty much the same thing. And I'm using those are extreme examples, but the point still stands. As parents, a lot of parents these days are trying to like do all this extra shit to make sure their kid makes it. And doing that extra shit might get your kid a college scholarship, but are they actually going to become something just because you did all that stuff? Probably not, number one. And number two, one thing you don't want is a resentful child who resents you because you forced your kid to be something that they didn't want to be. And I run into that a lot. I used to make, many of you don't know this, but before I became this with suits and all that, I used to make basketball videos on YouTube from 2005 to 2015. That's what I used to do. This is while I was playing. My playing years were the same years I did YouTube for basketball. And I would hear all the time, I would get emails from young people, younger than me. And it wasn't just basketball players. It'd be basketball. It'd be equestrian, believe it or not, gymnastics, figure skaters, people who played all kinds of sports. And half of them, it would be 2 different types of messages I would get. 3, actually. One of them would be, Dre, I'm trying to get much better. Can you give me some tips or help or motivation to get better? That'd be 50% of my messages. Then the other half would be this. 25% of them would be a kid saying, I really want to play a sport, Dre, but my parents don't want me to. I'm Indian, and my parents want me to be an engineer, but I want to be a basketball player. And my parents don't think basketball is serious. They want me to focus on engineering. What should I do? I would get that message about 25% of the time of their parents not wanting them to play a sport, but they wanted to play. The other 25% would be a kid saying, Dre, I do this thing because my mom or my dad really wants me to do it, but I don't really like doing it. I like it, but I don't like it that much. But my parents are trying to force me to do it. I don't want to do it, but I don't want to disappoint my dad. I don't want to disappoint my mom. How do I talk to them and let them know that I really don't want to do this anymore? I would get about 25% of my messages would be that. So those of you who are parents, my advice to you is do not try to force your kid to do something that is optional. Playing a sport is optional. No kid needs to play a sport. If they don't want to play, they don't have to play. Now, if they don't want to go to school, that's a different story. Now, if they don't want to play a sport, then let them not play a sport. Sports are optional. They don't have to play at all if they don't want to. So that's my advice to you, difference maker. He's 2 years old. Do nothing. Take him to the park and let him play on the sliding board. That's what you need to do. Jen and Neil said, straight A's high school could have been gifted. It was easy and never learned how to study when hard. Possible. That's also possible. And Rick Thomas said, you're correct. Party central. Yes, party central. So college is a good place for partying. And if you're partying too much in college, you will flunk out. I know a lot of people who flunked out of college because all they did was party and they forgot to study. I partied in college too. I should have partied more, but I did enough not partying to study enough to graduate. So you got to learn you got to balance it out. Roseanne said, perfect game and travel ball for baseball, but in Alabama, you can play for public school as a homeschool kid. Okay, so a bunch of you are saying that. Okay, that's a new thing. I didn't know that. So 100K, yes. Thank you, Nikki, for letting me know. Yes, Howard. Is that where Colin went to Howard? That's what I thought. Sid Vicious, thanks for the follow. Jenna said, are they expensive or don't invest in their school campus? No, they are expensive. I meant to get to that. So I'm glad you asked me to remind me. So coming out of high school, I got offered a 50% scholarship to go to Morehouse. Morehouse is where Martin Luther King Jr. went. I believe Samuel L. Jackson went there. Spike Lee went there. Morehouse is one of the most well-known HBCUs in the country. And it's an all-male campus. Now, Morehouse is in Atlanta and is in this area that they call the Quad, where it's 4 colleges all next to each other. So Morehouse is an all-boys school. Spelman is an all-girls school. So the girls who wanted to meet boys and the boys who wanted to meet girls, they just go to the other campus. So you got Morehouse and Spelman, all boys, all girls. You had Morris Brown College, which is co-ed, and you had Clark Atlanta, which is also co-ed. And these are all HBCUs. So 4 HBCUs in the same area in Atlanta. And Atlanta was like the black capital of the South of the United States of America. A lot of black people came together in Atlanta after slavery. That's why so many black people in Atlanta to this day. And they have these 4 colleges that a lot of people graduate and they stay in the area. So I got a 50%. I'm from Philadelphia, PA, by the way. So I got a 50% scholarship to go to Morehouse out of high school. The issue was I went to my parents after I got the offer for the scholarship because they gave it to me. I was at school. Like this recruiter came to my school. He gave me a 50% offer. My parents were happy because I got accepted to a bunch of colleges because I had pretty good grades and good standardized test scores. So I had a bunch of these acceptances, but I didn't know which school I should choose. And none of them were offering me much academically as far as a scholarship. Nobody was offering me a scholarship. So any school I went to, I was going to have to pay for it. Or better, more accurately, my parents were going to have to pay for it. So they were kind of concerned because my sister had a full scholarship to an Ivy League college because she was a way better student than I was. I was good, but she was like amazing. So they were worried about me, like, shit, how are we going to pay for this kid to go to school? Because he got accepted to all these schools, but he has no offers, no scholarship. Morehouse offered me 50%. So my parents are happy. All right, 50% scholarship. I guess you'll go to Morehouse. They didn't say that. I wanted to go to Morehouse. Like 50% scholarship, I'll go to Morehouse. So then they went and it was like a week. Like a week goes by, right? No, it's more than a week. Maybe about 2-3 weeks goes by. And I'm telling everybody at school, I'm going to Morehouse. About a week before high school graduation, because this happened while I was a senior. A week before high school graduation, my parents called me into their bedroom and they're like, if we send you to Morehouse, yeah, you got the 50% scholarship, but the other 50% that we had to pay for, first of all, you are not going to get enough student loans to pay for it because you won't qualify for the amount of money that it costs. And secondly, if we get the loans to pay for it, we're going to be in debt for the rest of our lives paying off you going to college. That's what my mom said. Now, that was their theory. Now, would she technically have been correct? Probably not, because I would have made enough money myself to pay it back on my own. But that's neither here nor there. That's what they thought then, because they didn't know how things are going to go. They said, we'll be in debt for the rest of our lives paying just the half that you still owe. Morehouse, right now, today, 1 year going to Morehouse out of state is $50,000 a year. Right now, today, 50 grand. So even though I just made jokes about HBCUs not having money and their campuses looking like shit, it's not because they're cheap. Like $50,000 a year is not cheap. I went to Penn State because I'm from Philadelphia, which is in the state of Pennsylvania, and Penn State's in-state tuition was very low, and they offered me money because I was a in-state student. So they offered me a scholarship. So the cost was extremely low for me to go to Penn State. That's why I went to Penn State, not because I cared about Penn State. So that's how it worked out. So Jenna, no, they are not cheap. HBCUs are not cheap at all. But you would think so if you walk through their campus. Turner said, I went to AAMU because baseball paid for it. Well, see, you had the athlete scholarship. I would prefer elsewhere, but I would have made the most of the opportunity. Yeah, so you had that scholarship. And listen, Turner, if AAMU had offered me a scholarship to play a sport, I would have went there too. So I am making jokes about HBCUs, but I understand. I completely understand. Jenna said, I can see donors, they always hit up grads every year, internal students too, and out of state. Yeah, and there's more people at PWIs. That's why they got more money. And there's just more white people, period, as a general point. Marky said, were there brick buildings at the HBCU? Hell yeah, there were brick buildings. What? If you like bricks, go to an HBCU campus. You'll see plenty of brick buildings. Ain't nothing but bricks. Rick Thomas, appreciate you. Turner said, Franklin went to VA Tech, correct. He had a winning record at Penn State, just couldn't win big games. Yeah, and And yeah, he got that deal like 5 weeks later, which is the point I was pointing out, is that he got fired for losing at Penn State, even though he did have a winning record. You're correct. And he got $40 million like 5 weeks later. I played overseas, John 669220. So I started off, my first job was in Lithuania, Kaunas, Lithuania. My last job was in Slovakia. That between 2005 and 2015. Julie Gaspo said, that was a great explanation. Thank you. Mary Reyes, thanks for the follow. Ann Grammatico said, I love the way you think. Thank you. Barb said, exactly. I like to expose my grandkids to everything, let them decide whether they like it or not. Yes, that's smart. Kuya said, which is harder to break into, sports or music? I say music simply because it's completely subjective. At least sports is objective in a lot of ways. Sports is generally objective because you got to actually do something. And it's measured objectively by a scoreboard. Like in basketball, you have to actually put the ball in the basket. There's no subjective opinion that says you didn't do it if you did do it. In music, it's all about who likes you. If you're trying to make it as a musician, you could be a good singer, but if nobody likes you, they just think you can't sing, even though you think you can sing, then you won't sign a record deal. Or if you can't get fans to listen to your SoundCloud, then you won't get on. So the entertainment industry is a 100% subjective. The sports industry is much more objective. And just as the type of person that I am, I prefer objective measurements. Subjective measurements are all based on people liking you and being friends with people, and it's all about people's opinions. The sports world, opinions matter, but they don't control the game. And people might not like you, they can hate you, they can think you're an asshole, but when you get on that court or on that field, if you can play, nobody can act like you can't play because they just saw what you did. In the entertainment world, if they don't like you, they can block you from even getting a chance in the first place. In the sports world, they can't do that. Everybody in the world can hate you, but if you're the best basketball player in town, they got to put you on a team because you being on the team helps the team win. In the entertainment world, it doesn't work that way. So my theory on it, Kuya, the harder one to break into is entertainment. Just because of the nature of the job is all decided by people's opinions. I don't like anything that's 100% decided by people's opinions. I'm just not a fan of that. I'm just not the type of person. Kuya said, I started playing bass at 12 because I was too small to play pro football. Well, good idea. Good idea for you. Turner said, facts on that. I got baseball and academic scholarships from AAMU. Only reason why I went. Yeah, I would have did the same thing. Jenna said, wow, my 3 undergrads and MA were cheaper than 1 year in state, but still. Yeah, it's crazy because you would think HBCUs are cheap, but they're not cheap. Morehouse is crazy. And I was looking at, there's other schools I was looking at because I was just thinking about this a while ago. Like, how much was Morehouse? Because I remember my parents told me we can't afford to take out loans to send you to Morehouse, but I didn't ask them how much money it was. But then I looked it up and I'm like, damn, it was more than I thought. What is the current tuition for an out-of-state student to attend Morehouse College for 1 year? Grok is pretty quick with this stuff. So Grok says tuition at Morehouse, private liberal arts institution. Now, it's a private university, so that's another reason why it costs so much. Now, they say the official tuition is 32 grand, but that's not counting the add-ons. The mandatory student fee is another $1,400. That brings you up to 33 grand. Then there's more. That's not it. There's more. You don't forget you're out of state, so it's not like you can drive from home. So the room, if you're living on campus, is another 10 grand. Then the board, which is the meal plan, they call it room and board. So the board is the food that you eat. That's another 5 grand. Then your books and supplies, and college textbooks are the biggest scam out there. You want to make money, write college textbooks. That's another $2,000. Then the personal miscellaneous is another $3,000. Then transportation, whatever that is another $1,500 to $3,000. The total cost is $52,545 if you are living on campus as an out-of-state student attending Morehouse College right now. Now, if you live off campus, then you could take 10 grand off, but then you still got to go get an apartment. So you might as well put the 10 grand right back on. So, and they say 73% of students receive aid. Now, again, I was going to get a scholarship, but my scholarship was not going to be enough. My parents were saying 25 grand a year. And back then, let's say it was 20 grand a year. It was still too much money for them. So that's what my parents were saying. And they were the ones who were paying for it. So it's not like I could argue about it. So that was the situation. So Raul said, look at the Notre Dame logistics. Now that grad with honors. What does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about. G Black, good morning. Low fee, good morning. Jenna Neal, private, so they don't get state funds. I guess, and probably also means they can set whatever price they want. Sorella says so many online colleges are now even inflating costs. Yeah, because people are paying for it. If people keep paying for it, then they're going to do it. Jen and Neil said UNLV is university, but still gets state funds and has international students, which brings in dollars, and they're in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of things that go into the cost of colleges. Generally, the cost of college is a bubble. The price keeps going up. This is the reason why colleges keep adding to their staff. So as more and more people working there, the administration gets bigger. They all get good jobs because there's all this money coming in. They build more buildings. So you go to any college campus, you notice that they're always building buildings. Where's the money coming from to build buildings? Because they just keep getting money thrown at them. So working in academia is a great job to have right now because they have plenty of money. Now, if and when that bubble bursts, then things will change. It's kind of like the housing market back in the day, 2007, 2008. So right now it's looking good. It's looking good for academia right now because everybody keeps paying and students are taking out these loans, not realizing how much money this is going to cost them in the long run. And they're assuming I'll make enough money to pay it back, but then they don't. And now they still owe. And then it becomes this whole issue for college students. This is why Joe Biden was trying to do the student loan forgiveness, was a whole different conversation. So anyway, Nathan Don said donors want their name on the building. Yeah, but you got to donate a lot of money to get your name on the building. All right, a lot of money to get your name on the building. And you got to keep donating to get your name on the building. Now, if you donate a few $1,000s, they might write your name on a wall on a brick with 2,000 bricks on there. Your name is on one of the bricks. You got to look around and find it for a couple $1,000s. But you want a building, you talking like $100 million, something like that, depending on what campus you're talking about. John says the education at an HBCU better, though maybe that's why the tuition is higher. Well, how do you quantify a better education? John, I would say no. I wouldn't say education at any school is necessarily better. Education is about what you do with it. It's not about the information that you're given. We all got access to the same information. We all can go check a book out from the library or go to Amazon or use ChatGPT. The cost is all subjective. The cost is subjective based on how they want to price it and who's willing to pay for it. That's the first law of economics, supply and demand. So you got to find a price that people are willing to pay at which you can supply and fulfill their desires to where they feel satisfied for the transaction that was made. Barb said, I'm a big fan of trade schools. I like the concept of trade school as opposed to college because at least you know that you're going to have a job and you're doing something that may not be so easily replaced by technology or knowledge work, and you don't have big loans to pay back when you get out. So I understand the concept of trade schools and people going to them. I know some people who have done it. I didn't do it, but I know some people who have done it. Okay, all that, folks. Let's wrap this one up. I'm usually done these by 10. I started an hour late, so I went an hour later here today. I usually do these 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. That is my normal time. Tomorrow we'll be here. My anticipation is a normal time. So my anticipation normal time, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, we will be off. We will maybe be back on Friday. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to do Friday yet. I'll let y'all know tomorrow if I'm going to do Friday. But we will be off Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. We are on tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern, topic to be determined. You want to get coached by me, get to my Power Presence protocol and get that manual that y'all can see right there. Y'all watching on TikTok, that manual right there. I'll send it to you when you're a member of my program. That is called the Power Presence Mastermind. The link is in my profile. And on that page, it'll tell you exactly what that mastermind is all about. It's about mastering that 85% of communication at a biological level. So this becomes part of your identity, not a behavior modification or remembering to do certain things. That's not the modification I'm talking about. We're talking about biological rewiring so that your confidence, your discipline, your aura, your energy, your leadership all hit different and that you leave an imprint on people without saying a single word. This means more sales, more money, higher positions, more promotions, more respect, more people noticing you, more people listening to you, more people remembering you, your communication hitting a whole lot harder when you master the power presence. Go to the link in my profile, have me as your direct coach, get into the mastermind, and we take it from there. Appreciate everybody for being in here. I know I started late here today, so thanks to those of you who stuck around. I will see you tomorrow morning at the normal time, 8 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. Everybody have a great Tuesday. I will see y'all tomorrow. Work on your game. We out of here.